Today we're going to move on to a little bit lighter music, and we're going to have our John Philip Sousa student report and also our Gershwin student report. Both of these composers are really interesting, and so I hope that our student reports are covering them well. I'll give the little tidbits as well. And be sure to read pages 414 through 427.
Starting on page 414 in your textbook, you will start reading about music in America, which is much more lighthearted than the music that we've been listening to. And so I hope you enjoy this next unit of study. First of all, let's look at music in colonial America. During colonial times, music was used to sing psalms and was the central social activity in Protestant churches. So in other words, people wanted to get together to have social time together, and they would come to church, and then they would sing psalms together and kind of have the dinner on the grounds and all day singing and brush arbor revival type things, and so everyone would just get together and have a good time singing hymns and singing scripture. The very first book printed in the English-speaking colonies was the Bay Psalm Book, and it was published in 1640. And so the people wanted music that they could sing together, and so there was desire to have this book published. William Billings was the first well-known American-born composer, and he published the New England Psalm Singer and started singing schools where he taught people how to read music. So they realized that the people who had come from Europe might have learned how to read music, but people who were coming over into colonial America were spending a lot of time just surviving because there was, they were working the land to either raise crops or to raise animals, and they were busy building barns and building houses, and there was really no time, nor were there instruments available to learn musical instruments. So singing was the primary musical way to express themselves, but many of them had not learned how to read music, having been so busy just surviving. And so William Billings started a singing school so that he could teach people how to sing. The main way William Billings taught people how to read music as they were singing was by using a shaped note music reading system, and he developed this music reading system. So the first note of the scale, which was do, was this triangle shape, and so you'll notice that both do's have this triangle shape with a point at the top. Re's were like just a circle, filled in circle. So re is the second note of the scale, and it was a circle. Mi is more of the diamond shape. It's the third note of the scale. Fa is kind of a lopsided triangle, which is the fourth note of the scale. The fifth note of the scale, which is sol, looks like the note shape that we have today, which is kind of this oval. La is a square, and it is the sixth note of the scale. T, which is the seventh note of the scale, is this kind of upside down triangle with a slight curve at the top. And then, again, we're back to do, which is this triangle. So no matter what key you were in, do always had this triangle shape, and sol always had this oval shape. And so they would have entire hymnals written in these shaped notes, and no matter what the key, they could sight read it and sing it because they had learned that a certain shape was a certain degree of the scale. And that's how he taught music reading and singing across the nation, and this whole system of note reading spread throughout the United States. Music during 19th century America meant that practically every town and village had a band that performed for picnics, parades, political rallies, dances, and carnivals. So you'll see that depicted in some early movies that are depicting early 19th century America. And anytime there was a political rally, you had a band there. Anytime there was a parade, there was a band there. If there was a community picnic, a band played. Again, you had dances and carnivals, you had a band that was playing. And everyone in town that could play an instrument would come together and play for these events. The Transcontinental Railroad facilitated concert tours by major orchestras. So many towns who couldn't afford an orchestra, they would have these touring orchestras come through and play and provide this cultural, orchestral, musical experience for towns that couldn't afford to have their own orchestra full time. Almost every home had a piano, and most children learned how to play it. It was just expected. Everyone took piano lessons, and everyone learned how to play the piano. This was similar also in Europe. Young ladies in particular were expected to learn how to play. But if you watch old movies like Sense and Sensibility, where they're showing this early America, all the ladies were learning how to play, and many of the men were learning how to play. Most children were learning how to play the piano. It was the most popular instrument. American composers were nationalistic, and they wanted their music to sound all American. You remember Stephen Foster. His music did not sound like European music. European music was this, high class, big orchestral sound, and Stephen Foster is, "Oh, I come from Alabama with a banjo on my knee." They wanted music to sound like it was American. They wanted it to sound fun, and so they were very nationalistic in how they were writing their pieces. John Philip Sousa was one of those great composers during this era. He was born in 1854 and died in 1932. And we will now have a student report. Go ahead and click on the student report on John Philip Sousa. Here are some interesting tidbits about John Philip Sousa. One of the things that I think is just really quite funny is that when he was 13, he informed his parents that he was going to join the circus and play in their band. So his father enlisted him into the U.S. Marine Corps band as an apprentice, and there he stayed. So he started out young working for the Marines because his father didn't want him to run off and join the circus. Now, Sousa was very interested in band music, and people who were in the band, he wanted to have the tuba playing in the band. And remember I talked about how that all of the little towns had parades and things? Well, it was hard to march with a big tuba. And so he worked with a guy named J.W. Pepper to create a marching tuba called a sousaphone. We'll see a picture of it in the next slide, but it was actually named after him, John Philip Sousa, and it's the sousaphone, and it would wrap around the player's body so he could march and play the tuba at the same time. So Sousa became very famous and popular as a composer and a conductor of mainly band music and march music. And he led the president's own band under 5 different presidents. Congress named his composition Stars and Stripes Forever as the official march of the United States, and his composition Semper Fidelis is the official march of the Marine Corps. And so his music is very patriotic sounding because it has been adopted by our country as the official march of the United States and of the Marine Corps. So here's a picture of what I was talking about with the tuba versus the sousaphone. On the left, you see the tuba. It's a very large instrument. You're not going to be able to walk around carrying that and playing it at the same time for very long. So Sousa helped to develop with J.W. Pepper this sousaphone, and you see on the right, it wraps around the body of the player, and they can march around while playing it. And so it just creates ease and comfort for the player to be able to march for a couple of miles while playing in a parade. Now let's listen to the 2 pieces that we discussed a moment ago, Semper Fidelis, the March for the Marine Corps, and Stars and Stripes Forever. And what you'll be seeing on the Stars and Stripes Forever is from the 1952 movie made about the life of John Philip Sousa. Now let's move on to 20th century America. American jazz and popular music swept the world during the 20th century, and we will see how it It moved from New Orleans all the way north up the Mississippi River primarily. During the World Wars, composers wrote music to raise people's spirits and to promote patriotism. And so you got that some with, your John Philip Sousa marches. Everyone was wanting to create and promote patriotism and help people feel like we are going to be able to win the war and we are going to free the oppressed. And so they wanted to raise people's spirits with their music. Kind of contrary to the people who were right in the middle of it in Europe, where all of it was happening, their music was sounding depressed and sad and anxious and worrisome. The United States was promoting having everyone feel positive, like they could conquer it. Universities began offering music appreciation classes, which I'm proud of and happy that we have done that. But they offered music appreciation classes in addition to their traditional music classes for music majors. So they were saying, we don't want just the people who want to make music a career to learn about music. They felt it was important to study about the arts, in particular music. They probably offered music appreciation, art appreciation, drama appreciation, so that people could study about the arts. They felt that was important. Also, institutions of higher learning have become the modern-day patrons of music, much as the church and nobility were in earlier times. And so if you're wanting to become a composer and that's better known, you need to work at a university. And if you are wanting to promote new music and orchestras and bands and choirs and opera, these are all going to be offered and have concerts available to the public at the university. So it is quite the patron of the arts. And if you want to go to a good concert of music, you can typically go to a university and find piano concerts, clarinet concerts, band concerts, jazz concerts, orchestra, opera. You'll find all these at the university. George Gershwin was one of our great American composers, and he was born in 1898 and died in 1937. So be sure you click on the student report about George Gershwin. Here are some interesting tidbits about George Gershwin. First of all, music did not interest him at all until he was 10 years old. He heard a performance of a piece and he really liked it and went, I might should pay attention to this music. And he found that he really liked it. He loved both classical and jazz music, and he incorporated both of them into his compositions, which made them extremely popular. Unlike, Schoenberg and Stravinsky and Shostakovich, where sometimes there would be riots to break out at their opening sessions, or people would say, this guy is insane. That is not at all what was happening with George Gershwin. His music was extremely popular, and he was highly successful and became very wealthy as a composer. And his brother Ira Gershwin wrote the lyrics to most of his vocal compositions and Broadway-style musicals, which became very famous and popular. He was the first American-born composer to appear on the cover of Time magazine. And sadly, he died at the age of 38 from a brain tumor. He was kind of at the height of his career, all was going well. He was making one great musical after another and performing, and suddenly he just didn't feel very well and was dizzy, and they went to check it out, and he had a brain tumor, and they did emergency surgery, and he died very young. And so kind of a sad ending to such a great success story. Gershwin is one of my favorite composers because I love just about everything he wrote. But one of my all-time favorites that he wrote is Rhapsody in Blue. And if you look on page 426 to 427, you will see the listening guide to go along with this song. It's a great marriage of jazz and classical music combined together. And it's this fantastic piano concerto with the orchestra, has the famous clarinet slide in it that is just almost impossible to play, but fantastic to listen to. And so I just love this piece, and I hope you enjoy listening to it. I actually taught it to a student who became a finalist at a competition. Sadly, he did not win, because it would have been great to have heard him play, and he played it so well. But anyway, I hope you enjoy listening to this. It's just a fantastic piece.
Our fourth exam will be coming up soon, so be sure you're studying and reading all of your textbook, listening to the excerpts, and comparing how instrumental music and vocal music and sacred music and secular music are changing throughout the eras.